Hi, welcome to Ranger Country. I'm Peter and I'm here at the Daystate factory on a servicing course for electronic guns. And I've managed to collar Tony and pin him down and have a little chat about the electronic guns and the history of the electronic guns.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah. Okay, well, it was a bit impromptu. We've just finished the course a few minutes ago.
Absolutely, we did.
So I've run around the factory in my hidden collection of guns, and I've put a few on the table. It is a subject really quite close to my heart. It's an interesting story which one day we'll write down. I have actually just done a little bit of a series in Airgun World, but it's obviously has to be brief, doesn't it?
We know how passionate you are about Daystate.
Well, yes, but it's very nice to be involved in something. But some of the guns started off before I was involved in it, really.
Okay.
And the first one I'd like to show you is something very unknown. And this is a Harperwolf Classic pistol.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this little gun was developed by three partners, David Snook, Steve Harper, and a guy called Pete. And Pete was the money.
Okay.
David was the electrician. And
I know
Steve,
the other two names.
yeah, and Steve was the engineer. And they got together. And in 1994,
That's a long time ago.
they launched this. And I was writing at the time, doing a little bit of freelance work for Airgun Shooting Sports magazine.
Okay.
And my editor, Pat Farley, had one on the range. I was living in Suffolk at the time. And we were down at ETL range in Essex. And he said, "Have you seen one of these?" And that was the first time I came across an electronic gun. And it just amazed me. I was completely blown away.
So how does that perform differently to what you've been used to?
Well, at the time, we were boiling and banging with spring guns and had PCPs with knock-open valves, and the regulator had kind of just come about, really. You know, it was just going into some of the guns then. But this thing, an electronic firing system, capacity discharge electronics, all built into the grip. It ran off a PP3 battery in the grip. It was an 11-shot repeater with a rotary magazine and an electronic firing system, switch on and off with a switch. And it was amazing. But they didn't sell any. And I think they didn't sell any because they didn't tell anybody they made it. They didn't have any money for marketing. And so they were handmade.
No social media back in those days.
Nothing like that.
No internet days.
And I was amazed by it. And I saw people and they just looked at me funny and carried on with their spring guns. So I just couldn't understand it. It didn't pick up. But it was in the back of my mind. And then it joined Daystate 2001. And we were developing new rifles. And one of the rifles we were developing was a Mark III Daystate to replace Mark II. And it had a paintball regulator. Daystate had been big into paintball, so we stole one of our paintball regulators and stuck it into an air rifle. And we were developing this Mark III, Huntsman Mark III rifle. And then by chance, we had a phone call with Harper, Steve Harper, and we went down there and we did a deal in a day to buy this pistol and to incorporate that into our rifles. And there was a shadow program running alongside the Daystate Mark III.
Okay.
And the Daystate Mark III at that point had taken about a year and a half. The parts were in the workshop. We'd shown one at CLA. And then Harper came back within 2 weeks with an electronic Daystate and said, "What do you think of this?" And I remember the gun we gave him was a little lightweight gun, and it did probably 40 shots per charge in 2.2, maybe 30 in 177, 11.5 foot-pounds. And he came back 2 weeks later with electronics in, and it did 90 shots per charge, 13 foot-pounds. So the power had gone up and the shot count had gone through the roof.
Yeah.
So we knew that we had something special there. And then the owner at the time said, "Well, I'm not developing two rifles to have it replaced a year later." So we amalgamated the project.
Okay.
And that's how this rifle came about. This is a Mark III A-type. And what you've got here is all the mechanical gun with the electronic project shoehorned into it. And we made 126 of these because we didn't have the money to scrap anything. So the electronics are drilled into the stock. It goes in there. And it was a hybrid gun. And the big problem was that the wood had been ordered from America. It's American black walnut. And it had already arrived. It was already at Gary Kane's and he was already making the stocks. So they recut the inletting to put the electronics in. But there wasn't room to put the full electronics in. It just wasn't deep enough. And when we used up enough of that wood from the first batch, we quietly phased this gun away and we made the gun properly, the export version as we called it, the Mark III B. And this was the rifle that really developed.
So what's the difference between the B compared to the A?
Well, the A uses a PP3, has no programmable options, and has a screwdriver slot on the main board to turn the power up and down.
Okay.
That's it.
As basic as it comes.
The Mark IIIB has programmable options, shot counter, magazine counter, 16 levels of power adjustment, far, far higher power, and uses a rechargeable nickel metal hydride battery, which is chargeable through a charging port in the stock. So much more sophisticated gun.
So back in 2003, how cutting edge was this then?
It was completely revolutionary, and it was unheard of electronic gun, really, and it kind of threw everybody because the market kind of wasn't ready for it. Or what if it rains? We just finished the wettest winter for 40 years. We were worrying about what if the sun comes out. But these were the sorts of questions that you got in 2002, well, it was developed in 2003 when it came out.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were hand to mouth on making them. I mean, I remember going to the Air Gun Centre, and he said, Peter at the Air Gun Centre said, that's the most exciting thing I've ever seen. I'll have 30. Well, it was a month's production. So, you know, it took a while to catch up. And sales, a little bit slow at first, and then it picked up. And then we dominated HFT with this rifle for a number of years. And it became really, you know, it made Daystate, to be honest, and it made our reputation as a modern electronic company, which before that had been a little bit more agricultural. You know, these were tractor tough, solidly built guns for farmers.
Yeah.
And this brought us into well ahead in modern era. And working with Harp and Snook, we moved on.
How was this received by the shooting fraternity?
I remember Terry Doe writing in the article, he said there are new air rifles and there are seriously new air rifles, and this is one seriously new air rifle, and he really sort of put his finger on it. The shooters adopted it, they were everywhere. I went to a shooting in 2005 where the entire firing line was Mark III's to the far as the eye could see. And I felt really good about that.
Put a big smile on your face.
Yeah, it was very nice because we'd actually arrived and we were doing well as a company.
Recognised.
Yeah. But not everything was nothing was in this gun really, and not everything was in this gun. And we had an idea to put a digital regulator in this gun. In fact, the first press release for this gun mentioned it. We quietly deleted it because we couldn't get it to work. It took us another 2 years of development, mostly hand development, to develop the MCT system.
Okay. And that's in the Mark.
And that's in the Mark IV. And we have a Mark IV. And this is the very last Mark IV. If you want to pick that up for camera.
Sure. Yep.
So this
that's the IS as well, isn't it?
Yes. So the Mark IV originally came out without the display screen, but very, very shortly after we put the IS screen on, and it brought the gun to life. And then you've got all the information now. Finally, you can see what the gun's doing, and you can program it on the switch through the trigger mechanism. This is the DS version, the final version with a 2-part cylinder, probably the finest one we ever made, and you don't see many of those. But if it starts the cylinder DS, you've got something really quite special. And that was the Mark IV. But it never really picked up as well as the Mark III. I think that the HFT people had really gone to target rifles, German target rifles, by that point. You know, they were originally HFT was about hunters in the woods shooting targets.
Yeah.
By 2008, they were really, it was FT light. You know, it was field target, but with smaller scopes.
Yes.
And they started to adopting special shooting clothing, funny hats, you know, big deep stocks and stuff like that. And we didn't really want to go that way. We wanted to stay with the hunting angle because 90% of our guns are sold to people who either hunt or want to hunt or shoot in clubs, not necessarily target shooters. So we kind of left them at that point. And consequently, the Mark III didn't really go where it perhaps could have gone.
Okay.
But we were already developing other rifles by this stage and had a good portfolio of guns, so it didn't hurt us. But it was, on the electronic side, it was a bit of a disappointment. A great rifle. Still a beautiful rifle, the Mark IVs. I think a lot of people got them just absolutely love them.
Absolutely.
But sales were a little bit disappointing.
So where did you go after the Mark IV?
Well, we concentrated a lot on the American market and high-power rifles. So we went into the Wolverine 303 and into the mechanical series. Yeah. And we were a little bit lost with electronics. We went back on the Mark IV, back to Harper and said, look, we need to we Mark V. We feel we should. We don't want to lose our heritage on electronic guns. You certainly don't want to.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we developed a Mark V, but the Harper development, as I sort of mentioned on the course, didn't really go anywhere. It was sort of lost in limbo. He spent a year looking at designs and bits and pieces, but it really wasn't a progress. That was presented back to Italy. Adriano Nodari was by now really the chief designer in Italy, designing more Brocock and Daystate rifles than anything else. Although he did a shotgun design as well, he had moved, really his passion became to these rifles.
Yeah.
And he picked up the electronic pattern, and we were about to produce a Mark V rifle when the American importer said, I want a bullpup. So,
Just as bullpup.
So we switched the projects. Normally you would do a conventional rifle and a bullpup. We switched it when we did a bullpup. And I haven't actually put one on the table.
No, you haven't. There's one missing, isn't there?
Yeah. So maybe we'll throw that in at the end. Quickly.
Yeah.
But the Pulsar came out in 2015. Massive success. Sales and
Fantastic rifle, wasn't it?
We could only make so many parts a month. We can only assemble so many guns a month, and that really tied us down for 2 years. And after 2 years, finally in 2017, we were able to go back and look at the rifle version, possibly, which we knew would be more popular, because not everyone liked bullpups, and we came up with the Red Wolf. By this time, we felt that the name Mark V was a bit old, it didn't really have any relevance, so we went for Red Wolf. And this is the heritage version.
That's a special edition.
Limited edition version, yeah. Beautiful rifle. And that has been a major success. It's undoubtedly the best of all the electronic series of this series. And its timeline really runs from this, through these, into that, and into this. It is a completely different chassis, different set of electronics, but it's the final one really in this series for us. It's doing very well. It's relatively new. It was facelifted in 2019 with some new electronics.
The GCU2.
That's right,
Yeah.
2.0, which gave it the 25% more power, and added a whole lot more programming. And that's where the Red Wolf is today, and probably Daystate's top-selling rifle.
So the pedigree of this started 20 years ago?
Yes, 2000. The meeting in 2002. And the prototype working really that they were doing in 1994, although there's not a lot in there that you would recognise in here, it does
It's
come.
the same idea. That's where the idea came from.
The idea came from was developed from there by the same people.
Yeah.
But because electronics were, by this time, Adriano, who was putting in his own ideas, and the electronics had to fit in a box, so none of this is compatible with this. It's a line, but it is a completely new rifle.
From the Red Wolf, we go to
the Delta Wolf. So
the
this is just an amazing rifle. This is something which is really new, and it has yet to set its mark really but it deserves to do that.
So this goes away from this. This is the Mark V electronics in there.
Yes, I suppose with you answer the question, where do you go from a Mark V? And the answer is you ditch everything and start again.
And that's what happened.
And that's what's happened with this. You started completely from scratch. But they wanted to go into a more tactical look, a shorter rifle, interchangeable. They wanted all of the things that we're being asked for, but easy to do. So it's all programmed. So this rifle was developed really over about 3 years. But unfortunately got caught up in the pandemic. It just landed at the wrong minute. Yeah. It disrupted everything because the launch got cancelled and delayed, and then we all went into lockdown. And of course, the electronic design team was in Italy, and they were in the epicenter of the pandemic, so they had that to cope with, and everything got delayed. And of course, we're still not out of it, are we? As we sit here,
no, we're still ongoing.
We're ongoing with it. There are still supply problems everywhere in the world, and that has an effect on everything. So. But the gun really deserves more than that. It's got infinite programmability. This is a 12-foot-pound one, but you can get up to 95 foot-pounds in a 30 caliber. You can change them. If you've got a license, you can reprogram the 12-foot-pound one. The factory can give you the information. There's a plug-in dongle, which we launched a couple of weeks ago, that allow you to connect to your laptop. Something you could never do with any of these other rifles.
I think with this one, but we touched on this on the course, didn't we? That it is upgradable in the future for any upgrades.
Yeah, really, anything you want to do and legally are allowed to do, this gun can do it. And it's designed for you to do it, not some gunsmith who's been on a 2-day course. It's designed for them to do it. They can change it from left to right. It's ambidextrous completely. You can even turn on the dongle the display screen upside down, so if you're left-handed, you can see it from your
We
left
did
shoulder.
talk about that on the course, didn't we? And that is just something that you wouldn't think about
Yes.
until you consider holding it in your left hand. And
Well, the journalist came up, Jules Wicker, he said to me, I'm left-handed, can I have the display screen on the other side? Absolutely not. Complete rewriting of the gun. So we put it straight upside down. So I think this is the future, and this is the most amazing gun. This has got a long, long way to go. There's a lot of things we're doing to this, and a lot of upgrades have taken place. And that's where it leaves Daystate.
what next, do you think?
Well, we can't say, can we? We'll be shot.
But we're still carrying on.
But we're still carrying on. There's a lot to do, and there's a lot of development. But you wanted to see where it all came from? And
Definitely.
here it all is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
I think
Peter.
that's been
Lovely to
really,
speak to you.
really interesting. And we'll see you again next time.
Good.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.